Do you know why Lord Vishnu descended to earth as Parashurama, wielding his mighty axe to rid the world of corrupt rulers? The tale unfolds in a time when the Kshatriyas, the warrior class, had grown arrogant, drunk on power. Their armor gleamed in the sun, but their hearts were dark with greed. They oppressed the weak, cast aside the sacred duties of their caste, and disrespected the holy Brahmins. The earth groaned under their tyranny, and the balance of the cosmos tilted dangerously toward chaos. Vishnu, ever watchful, took notice. As the air thickened with injustice, he descended in his sixth avatar, Parashurama. Parashurama, tall and fierce, with flowing locks of matted hair, bore the Parashu, a fearsome axe gifted by Lord Shiva. His eyes burned with divine wrath, and his muscles rippled with the strength of the gods. The earth trembled beneath his feet as he marched forward to restore Dharma, the sacred order. The Kshatriyas, once fearless in battle, now stood in awe and terror of Parashurama. "Who dares challenge the might of kings?" they asked. But their question was met with the swift, gleaming arc of the axe. The cries of the corrupt rulers echoed through the valleys as Parashurama's divine fury cleansed the world, battle after battle. His anger was not blind, but a burning flame of justice, purging the land of arrogance and greed. Parashurama, born to the sage Jamadagni and the virtuous Renuka, carried the weight of destiny from the moment of his birth. His appearance was fierce and commanding. His tall frame, darkened by years of battle and penance, held the powerful combination of a sage's wisdom and a warrior's strength. His eyes, deep and intense, reflected the fire of a man who could command both peace and war. His hair, long and unkempt, flowed with the winds of his wanderings, while the divine Parashu axe, gifted by Shiva, gleamed ominously at his side, symbolizing his dual nature. One fateful day, Kartavirya Arjuna, the Kshatriya king known for his 1,000 arms, arrived at Jamadagni's hermitage. His arrogance was as grand as his stature. His golden crown sat heavily on his brow, and his eyes shone with the cold light of unchecked power. He had heard of the divine cow, Kamadhenu, a celestial being capable of producing endless bounty. Despite the sage's warm hospitality, Kartavirya's greed overtook him. "I shall take this creature," Kartavirya declared, his voice a thunderous command. Jamadagni, his aged face calm but resolute, protested with the gentleness of a Brahmin. "She is not for the likes of kings, but for the righteous who walk the path of Dharma." Ignoring the sage's words, Kartavirya seized Kamadhenu, leaving behind the once serene ashram in ruins, and Jamadagni humiliated. The wind carried the sage's quiet murmur to the heavens, his heart heavy with grief, setting the stage for the wrath of Parashurama. When Parashurama returned and learned of the vile injustice committed against his family, the flames of anger surged through him. His face, usually calm and ascetic, darkened with fury. Clad in simple robes, his long matted hair falling over his broad shoulders, Parashurama grasped the Parashu, his mighty axe, a divine gift from Lord Shiva himself. His eyes, ablaze with the fire of righteousness, reflected the weight of his vow for vengeance. "The king will pay for this treachery," he muttered, his voice cold and determined, cutting through the silence around him like a blade. With measured steps, he marched toward the palace, the air heavy with the impending clash. As Parashurama neared, the wind seemed to still, sensing the fury of the battle to come. Kartavirya Arjuna, the arrogant Kshatriya king, stood tall, his 1,000 arms raised, each wielding a weapon. His eyes, glowing with pride, met Parashurama's, but behind them lay the faint glimmer of fear. The two faced each other in a battle of wills, the tyrant relying on brute strength and overwhelming numbers, while Parashurama, with his God-gifted axe, embodied divine justice. With swift, precise movements, Parashurama cut through Kartavirya's army, each strike a flawless dance of power and precision. His Parashu gleamed in the sunlight, its edges sharper than mortal steel, as it cleaved through shields and armor. The tyrant fought back with all his might, but Parashurama's fury was unstoppable. His strikes came faster and fiercer, until Kartavirya, overwhelmed and broken, fell before the righteous warrior. The death of Kartavirya Arjuna was but the spark that ignited Parashurama's wrath. His sharp eyes, filled with divine fury, saw the deeper rot within the warrior class. The Kshatriyas, once noble protectors, had become oppressors of the weak, scorning the sacred laws of Dharma. Clad in simple robes, his battle axe glowing with power, Parashurama strode across the land, his steps heavy with purpose. "I shall not rest," he vowed, until the earth is free from the weight of their arrogance. His campaign was relentless, spanning many years. Over 21 times, Parashurama swept through kingdoms, his divine weapon striking fear into the hearts of corrupt kings. The battlefields trembled under his might as dynasties crumbled at his feet. The air was thick with the smell of iron and earth as he cut through the armies that stood in his path. His tall figure moved swiftly, his long hair flowing with each fierce strike, while the blood-red sunset bathed the fields in a haunting glow. Few dared to speak against him, for his mission was clear: to restore Dharma, the sacred order of the universe. His actions, though harsh, were not born from cruelty, but from a divine duty to cleanse the world of corruption. As his axe gleamed under the sun, Parashurama left behind only those few kings whose hearts were still true to the divine law, allowing them to rebuild a new era of righteousness. As Parashurama strode through the land, his very presence struck fear into the hearts of all who beheld him. His broad frame, clad in simple but weather-worn robes, was a stark contrast to the divine axe he carried, an ancient weapon gleaming with celestial energy. The blade, gifted by Shiva himself, seemed to hum with the power of justice, its sharp edges shimmering under the harsh sun. His long, unkempt hair fell around his shoulders, while his piercing eyes, filled with the fire of vengeance, scanned the horizon. His face, etched with lines of determination and sorrow, betrayed the burden of his violent quest. As Parashurama approached, villages fell into silence, the wind itself holding its breath. The air was thick with the scent of dust and fear. And even the mightiest of kings, once brimming with arrogance, found themselves retreating at the mere mention of his name. "The slayer of Kshatriyas comes," they would whisper, and soon their grand palaces would stand empty, deserted in haste. Despite the rivers of blood left in his wake, Parashurama's heart remained loyal to his family, especially to his father, Jamadagni. He would often recall his father's voice, calm, wise, and unjustly silenced by the greed of Kartavirya Arjuna. "I do this for you, father," Parashurama would mutter under his breath as he lifted his axe, preparing to rid the world of yet another corrupt ruler. After years of blood-soaked battles, Parashurama, the once mighty warrior, grew weary. His tall, muscular frame, once clad in battle armor, now sat by the tranquil riverbanks, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. The soft breeze carried the scent of wet earth and flowers, but Parashurama's brow remained furrowed in deep thought. His divine axe, gifted by Lord Shiva, rested beside him, gleaming faintly under the twilight sky. The once weighty instrument of justice now seemed like a burden to the aging warrior. His rugged face, etched with the lines of age and countless battles, reflected his inner turmoil. "Have I truly fulfilled my duty?" he whispered to the rippling waters, his voice heavy with doubt. The river answered only with its endless flow, a gentle reminder of the passage of time. "Or have I become the very force of destruction I swore to fight?" His hands, once steady and unyielding in battle, trembled slightly as they touched the cool earth beneath him. In the heavens, the gods watched in silence. Vishnu, from whom Parashurama had descended, understood the warrior's sorrow. His mission had been harsh but necessary: to cleanse the world of the corrupt rulers who had betrayed their duty. Yet now, as Parashurama sat in reflection, his heart ached not just for the lives taken, but for the man he had become. The weight of his deeds hung upon him, and though his purpose had been righteous, the cost weighed heavy on his soul. Though his heart burned with the fire of vengeance, Parashurama was not solely defined by wrath. His weathered face, sharp with the lines of battle and time, often softened in the presence of his students. Clad in simple, earth-toned robes, Parashurama moved with a quiet grace, his divine parachute, the mighty axe, resting by his side, a symbol of both his past fury and present wisdom. In later years, Parashurama's name became synonymous with knowledge, particularly in the art of war. He trained many of the greatest warriors the world would know, including the revered Bhishma, the noble Drona, and the determined Karna. Each of these disciples saw in him not just a master of combat, but a figure of immense depth, a man who had once purged the world of corruption and yet understood the importance of wielding power with honor. As he stood before them, his gaze steady and penetrating, Parashurama would often say, "The weapon is but a tool. It is the heart that commands it." His students revered him not only for his unparalleled skill, but for the profound sacrifices he had made for the sake of justice. The stillness of the forest around them, the rustling leaves and distant sound of water, formed the perfect backdrop for lessons that were as much about restraint as they were about battle. His presence was a reminder that strength, when balanced with wisdom, becomes a force for righteousness. As the centuries slipped away like grains of sand, Parashurama, once filled with the fire of vengeance, chose a life of deep meditation and penance. His imposing figure, now cloaked in the simple garb of an ascetic, seemed timeless, his fierce eyes softened but still burning with the wisdom of ages. His once blood-stained axe lay beside him, a silent reminder of the battles fought and the justice he had served. Among the tall trees and the rustling winds, Parashurama's presence was a quiet force, yet even in stillness, his name struck fear into the hearts of the corrupt. The very air around him seemed to hum with power, as if the earth itself knew of the divine purpose he still held. "My task is not yet complete," he would often whisper to himself, his voice barely audible over the chants of ancient mantras. Destined to live until the end of time, Parashurama is one of the Chiranjeevi, the immortals. His name is carried on the winds of legend, a warning to those who would abandon the path of righteousness. It is said that Parashurama waits, not in weariness, but with patience, for the arrival of Kalki, Vishnu's final avatar. When the end of the current age approaches, Parashurama will pass on his divine knowledge, ensuring the cycle of balance continues. Until then, his watch remains eternal, a solitary figure, steeped in both history and the promise of the future. Parashurama's legacy is woven from the dual threads of destruction and protection, standing as a figure of immense power, tempered by responsibility. Tall and imposing, his form is that of a warrior ascetic, his skin weathered by battles fought and his eyes deep pools of wisdom gained through penance. His mighty axe, once gleaming with divine power, now rests beside him, a reminder of the justice it once meted out in the hands of a man who embodied both fury and restraint. In the stillness of the twilight hours, Parashurama reflects on the heavy burden of his past. "I was the harbinger of justice," he would murmur, his voice barely audible over the soft rustle of the wind. "But in my rage I bore the weight of sorrow." The scent of earth and sandalwood fills the air around him, as he sits in meditation beneath an ancient tree, its gnarled roots mirroring the complexity of his journey. Though an avatar of Vishnu, Parashurama's tale is deeply human, marked by rage as fiery as the sun and grief as profound as the ocean. His vengeance was swift, his heart aflame with the loss of his father, but over time, wisdom cooled the fires within. The once violent strikes of his axe now symbolize the balance between justice and mercy, a harmony he eventually embraced. His story, though divine, resonates with the struggles of humanity, where anger, loss, and redemption intertwine in the eternal pursuit of Dharma.